The Cave of Dark Shadows, The Awakening. In the farthest reaches of a forgotten valley, nestled against the steep cliffs of a towering mountain range, the small village had always been a peaceful refuge from the outside world. The village seemed untouched by time, as though it were a relic of an age-long past. Its stone houses, each with their moss-covered roofs, stood silently beneath the towering trees that surrounded it, their roots entangled in the deep earth. It was a quiet place, where the only sound was the murmuring of the river and the occasional call of a distant bird. The villagers, simple folk who lived by farming and trading, had no reason to fear the world beyond their borders. But that was before the army arrived. The day they came, the air felt different, heavy and charged, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. The soldiers marched into the village like a storm, their boots stirring up clouds of dust, their uniforms dark and polished. They were led by General Vukov, a man with eyes like cold steel, whose purpose was clear but whose intentions were cloaked in secrecy. The general knew this mission would change the course of history, but he did not yet understand the true cost of what he was about to unleash. Vukov had been given specific instructions by his superiors. He was to find the ancient weapon that had been buried for centuries, hidden away in the heart of the mountains. The weapon would restore his nation to its former glory, and more. It would give them power beyond anything the world had ever known. But Vukov had always been driven by a hunger for more than just political dominance. He had spent his career clawing his way to the top, never once hesitating to use whatever means necessary. Now, at the precipice of his success, he was determined to seize the power that had eluded him for so long. Alongside him were two psychics, Ivan and Mikhail, both of whom had been recruited for their unusual abilities. Ivan, the more sensitive of the two, had been haunted by visions of this moment since childhood. His dreams were filled with strange, shifting symbols, dark creatures with glowing eyes, and ominous whispers from an ancient past. He never understood them, not until now, standing at the cave's entrance. The images from his nightmares were becoming all too real. Mikhail, on the other hand, was driven by a thirst for knowledge. He saw the potential of the cave as something far more than just a weapon, a gateway to ancient knowledge, a way to transcend human understanding. His mind buzzed with excitement, oblivious to the growing sense of dread that lingered in the air. The soldiers worked relentlessly, digging deeper into the mountain, as if the earth itself resented their presence. The closer they got to their goal, the colder the air became. It wasn't just the temperature, it was as if the very atmosphere had changed, as if the air itself were imbued with an unnatural energy. The silence that enveloped them was unlike any silence they had ever experienced. It wasn't peaceful or still, it was the kind of silence that fills the mind with unease, as though something is waiting just beyond the edge of perception. Then, after days of grueling work, they found it, the cave. It was hidden beneath a layer of stone so dense that even the strongest explosives had barely made a dent in it. But when the rock finally cracked open, it was as if the mountain itself sighed in relief. The entrance to the cave yawned before them, dark and foreboding. The air around it seemed charged, humming with energy. A cold wind blew from within, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, but the general was resolute. They had come this far, and nothing would stop them now. As they ventured deeper into the cave, the sense of dread grew stronger. The walls, slick with moisture, seemed to pulse with a strange, rhythmic vibration. The psychics, both of whom had felt the cave's power from the moment they stepped inside, grew uneasy. Ivan's visions were becoming clearer, more intense. He saw flashes of an ancient, monstrous figure, its eyes burning with an unholy fire, its body twisting and writhing in the depths of the cave. It was something he had feared, something he had known would come, but had never fully understood. As they approached the final barrier, a smooth stone, unlike any material they had ever encountered, Mikhail was the first to react. He fell to his knees, clutching his head, his body trembling with the force of the energy pouring out from the stone. The symbols carved into the stone shimmered and shifted as if alive. The air around them thickened, swirling with a dark energy that felt ancient, predatory. "This is it," Mikhail whispered, his voice trembling. "This is what we've been searching for, but it's not just a weapon. It's something far worse." But General Vukov, driven by his ambition, ignored their warnings. "Blast it open," he ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. The explosion shattered the stone, and in that instant, everything changed. The moment the stone cracked, a wave of darkness poured from the fissures. It was not smoke or gas, it was something far worse. The darkness had a presence, a will of its own, as if it were alive. It swirled around them, choking the air, seeping into their lungs. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the walls of the cave began to move. At first, it was subtle, small tremors, a slight shift in the stone. But soon, the cave seemed to pulse and writhe, the walls stretching and contracting like the ribs of some great beast. The very earth beneath them seemed to come alive with a hunger that was far beyond their understanding. The soldiers, once confident in their mission, began to panic. Their training had prepared them for battle, for war, but this was beyond anything they had ever faced. The cave had become a maze, shifting and closing in on them. Some soldiers ran in terror, but no matter which way they turned, the passages led them back into the depths, deeper into the ever-changing labyrinth. The air grew heavier with each passing second, thick with the oppressive weight of something ancient and malevolent. One by one, the soldiers began to fall. Some dropped dead, their bodies seizing as though struck by some unseen force. Others clawed at their throats, gasping for air, their eyes wide with terror. The cries of the dying echoed through the cavernous halls, blending with the rising laughter, a deep, mocking sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. By the time General Vukov, Ivan, and Mikhail had made their way back to the surface, more than 20 soldiers had perished within the cave's depths. Their bodies were left behind, victims of the force they had awakened. Gasping for air, they staggered out into the sunlight, but the sense of dread had followed them. The cave, though behind them, seemed to loom over the land like a dark shadow, its presence felt even in the open air. Vukov, pale and shaking, looked back toward the mountain. He knew they had released something far more dangerous than any weapon. "Seal it," he ordered, his voice hoarse. "No one can ever enter that place again." He gave orders to pour every available ton of concrete into the cave's entrance. The sound of the concrete pouring into the cavern was deafening, drowning out the distant whispers that still seemed to call from below. They buried the cave as best they could, but Vukov knew it was only a matter of time before the force they had disturbed would find another way to escape. They could only hope that the concrete would hold, though deep down, he knew it wouldn't. Days later, a military base was erected on the site, a fortress to keep the world from ever discovering the horrors hidden within the mountain. Surveillance cameras were installed, and armed guards were posted around the perimeter. But the darkness from the cave never ceased. Inside the base, Vukov lay awake at night, his mind racing. The whispers, the laughter, and the images from his visions continued to haunt him. He had awakened something ancient, something far beyond human understanding, and now, no matter how many layers of concrete they poured, it was only a matter of time before the forces within the earth broke free.